going to go a little heavy today, but I think that the payoff, Be'ezus Hashem, will be worth it. So, the flavor of, I guess we could say the season, it's not the flavor of the week, but the flavor of the season now, obviously, after Tisha B'Av, and we have Shivat and Nechemta, is Geula, is the Beis Hamikdash, the Beit HaMikdash. We're mourning, or we just were mourning the first two Beit HaMikdash, and we obviously eagerly await the third Beis HaMikdash. So there's a pasuk that says, Gadol yeh kvod habayis hazeh ha'achron min harishon. Great will be the kavod of this last Beis HaMikdash relative to the first. Now, generally speaking, Pshutei Shel Mikra is accepted as being talking about the second Beis HaMikdash, but there are Makoros that explain it as talking about the third Beis HaMikdash, and Harishon refers to the first two. So the third Beis HaMikdash will be Gadol relative to the first two Beit HaMikdash in a category of its own. Now, going back to one of the first, at the very least, one of the first references, perhaps the first we have to the Makom HaMikdash in Chumash, we have a pasuk that says, by Yaakov Avinu, Vayira Vayomer, Ma Noira Makom Hazeh, how awesome is this place, Yaakov Avinu says, Ein Zeh Ki Im Beis Elikim. This is nothing but Beis Elikim, the home of Hashem, V'zeh Shar HaShamayim. Now, Targum Onkelos translates the words Ein Zeh Ki Im Beis Elikim, Leis Dein Asar Hedyot. This is no ordinary place. Now, the word hedyot, it's not an uncommon word by any stretch, but there's a very interesting context in which we see the word hedyot used. And that is, there are Sforim that refer to the Asara Mamores. The Eibishter, it says, Pirkei Avos, Asara Mamores Nevra Ha'olam, the Eibishter created the world in Asara Mamores, in these 10 sayings. These Asara Mamores are referred to in some Sforim as Milin de Hedyota. Ordinary words, mundane words. What does it mean, ordinary words? It's the Eibishter's speech. They're ordinary words relative to another set of 10 things that the Eibishter said, which is Aseres HaDibros. Aseres HaDibros is Torah, which the Eibishter gave us at Matan Torah. That's Milin, let's say, Milin de Kedusha, Milin de Elokus, whatever you might want to call it. Relative to the Aseres HaDibros of Torah, the Asara Ma'amaris, which the Eibishter used to create the world, which is Chol, is called Milin de Hedyota. These are regular, mundane words. Now, when we talk about names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has names, let's say perhaps we could say the two most common. I think off the top of my head, they're surely going to be the two most commonly used. Yud Kei Vav Kei and Elikim. Yud Kei Vav Kei. First, a step back. What are names? What is a name? A name is a tool that you use to refer to an entity, let's say. Right? I have a number of different names. My kids call me Tati. My friends from high school call me Sruli. My friends from more recently call me Yisroel. People who I teach in a classroom call me Rabbi Glick. People who I teach online call me Rabbi Yisroel Glick. So if I'm walking down the street and I hear someone call me from behind, and I hear someone call out, Rabbi Glick, before I recognize the voice and before I see the face, I'm already going to react in the persona of the classroom teacher, because Rabbi Glick is what I'm called by students in the classroom. So Rabbi Glick is a name that's used to refer to me in that persona as a classroom teacher. If I hear someone call Tati, before I even consciously register, oh, it's one of my kids, before I recognize the name, I'm automatically going to react in father mode, because that's the name that's used to refer to that father persona that I have, etc. If I hear someone call out Yisroel, I know it's a friend from the last 10, 15 years, as opposed to a friend from high school who would have called me Sruli. Now, the way that I'm going to interact with and behave with my children is going to be very different to the way that I interact and behave with my classroom students, which is going to be different to the way that I interact and behave with students online, because they're different kinds of people and I have different relationships. And that doesn't mean that any one of those is fake. The way that I interact with my children is not fake. The way that I interact with my students in the classroom is not fake. They're different personas. I am a person who has different personas with which I interact with different kinds of people in different environments. And there are different names that are used to call to those different personas. Now, Kuviyachal, obviously, there's the Eibishter, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is beyond personas and beyond description, etc., etc. But then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has midos also, midas HaChesed. There's the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Chesed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Gvura, for example. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is operating in Chesed mode, that the Chesed is not HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, it's something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu employs to operate, let's say, Kaviyachol. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is operating in that mode, there may be one name that's used to refer to and elicit that behavioral mode, that let's call it a persona. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is operating in Gvura mode, there may be a different name that refers to that persona of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is why there, the Sidurim, that are some of the ones that are Pi Kavanas Arizal, etc. As you're davening, there are different names and different spellings and nukudas in different places. And the idea there is that at different parts of davening, you want to be eliciting different personas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there's no way that I could keep up with all of that, but that's the idea. So these two most common names are Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, and Elikim, which are going to refer to different specific personas or operational modes, maybe we could call them, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, that name has all the letters you need for Haya, Hoive, Yihiyeh. Was, is, will be. Because the name Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at a level at which time is irrelevant. All of time exists together. The past, the present, the future, they all exist together within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the same is true of space. Every point in space exists together within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at that level of operation, we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, because there, at that place, Haya Hoven Yeh Ake Echad. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have created the world in that way, it wouldn't be the world that we know. For us to experience the world the way that we're supposed to, time has to be separated out. Space has to be separated out. It couldn't be created through HaKadosh Baruch Hu operating at that level. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world primarily operating with the name Elokim. Elokim is associated with Elokim with a hey. If you're going to try to do the gematria, don't do it with a kuf, it's with a hey. Is the same gematria as Hateva. Elokim refers to this persona, let's say, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where he is limiting, defining, reducing. And by limiting and defining and reducing, we end up with a limited, defined, and reduced world where time is limited and separated out, and points in space are separated out. And now we can have this limited existence with our limited perception in a limited world because it was created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu as he's referred to with this name of Elokim. And that's why Elokim has the same gematria as HaTeva, because Teva, nature as we know it, has to be created with these restrictions. That's the only way it could work. Incidentally, if you look in the Maaseh Bereshis, in Bereshis, the beginning of Torah Shebechsav, whenever there's an act of creation by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it says Elokim, Bereshis bara Elokim. The only name that's used there is Elokim. There's no Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But if you count the number of times the name Elokim is used in an act of creation, it's 26, which is gematria of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Because it's the same Eibishter. It's just that the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is behind the scenes, because HaKadosh Baruch who is creating, for him, Haya Hoven Yeh is Echad. It's just that the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is behind the scenes, which is why it's in a remez. But the actual name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and that persona that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is creating the world is limitation, reducing, etc., etc., etc. So the Asara Mamaras are milin dehedyota. They're words that are used to create teva, words that are used to create this limited world in this reducing persona of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we refer to with the name Elokim. And what did Yaakov Avinu say in the pasuk? Hang on a sec. I'm going to get to the next pasuk in a minute. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. In the Beis Hamikdash, what did we see? Beis Hamikdash was a place in the world where the Shechina was begili, behiskalos. And we had a number of ways in which, first of all, the Beis Hamikdash was known for Nisim, but there are a number of ways in which we see specifically, not quite Haya Hovi V'yeh Ke'echad, but different points in space Ke'echad, which goes hand in hand with Haya Hovi V'yeh Ke'echad. Oimdim tzvufim mishtachavim rechavim. The space and Makam Ha'aron Eina Min HaMidah. In the Beis Hamikdash, the rules of space didn't apply. It was in physical space, but in that space there was a revelation, a gili of the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, where nature isn't fully active. Leis Dain Asar Hedyot. This place, the Makom HaMikdash, isn't limited to Asar Hedyot, to the way that the world is usually created through Asara Mamoris, Milin de Hedyota, Shem Elikim. Here we have Hiskalos of Shem Havaya. That's what the Beis HaMikdash was. It's a place where the Eibishter, as he is for himself, not the way that he creates the world, was present in a more pure sense, which is why we saw Nisim, which is why we saw the rules of space overridden. This was Bechlal in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, when it comes to the third Beis HaMikdash, we know that Chazal say, Lo ka Avram, based on Psukim, Lo ka Yitzchak, Ela ka Yaakov. Now, Chazal, and the Maharsha there says specifically, the third Beis HaMikdash is Yaakov, the first is Avram, the second Beis HaMikdash is Yitzchak, the third Beis HaMikdash is associated with Yaakov. Avram generally is associated with Chesed, with Midas HaChesed. It's very obvious why Avram Avinu is Chesed. He's all about giving kindness. Yitzchak is generally associated with Gvura. Now, Gvura often is strength, can be misunderstood. Gvura is a midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gvura doesn't mean being mean or nasty. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not mean or nasty, Rahmanu Litzlan. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be very demanding, strong, strict. And just a quick mashal, you could have teachers, two teachers who are both teaching their students and giving everything that they have. One teaches in a way of chesed, one teaches in a way of gvura. What's going to be the difference? The teacher teaches in a way of chesed, is giving to the students. The student asks a question, the teacher gives the answer. Teacher gives information, gives information, gives information. And at the end of the year, the students in this class are going to come out with troves of information because the teacher's giving. A Gvura teacher, a teacher who's demanding and strict, you come to your teacher with a question, a Gvura teacher is going to say, okay, good question. Where do you think you might be able to look to get some insight? Where do you think you can go to find the answer? And the Gvura teacher is going to pull it out of the student, is going to demand of the student, not just give the answer, demand of the student that the student come to the answer. And this is the makar of, incidentally, of Yitzchak being associated with Gvura, is the fact that he was known for digging wells. You dig a well, Avram Avinu, you came to Avram Avinu, you were thirsty, you hold out a cup, Avram Avinu pours some water in. Yitzchak Avinu dug a well, there's water in there, bring it out. Dig and let the pre-existing water come out. So Yitzchak's demanding. And both of these teachers have a mila. The students that come out of the Chesed teachers class at the end of the year are going to have troves of information. The students that come out of the Gvura Dika teachers class at the end of the year will have much less information, but you can guarantee that they will remember that information for far longer because they own it. It was integrated, they figure it out, they worked on it. They don't have as much, but what they have is really integrated into who they are, and they will remember it for a much longer time. Each one has a mila, and each one has a chsaron in that it's missing the mila of the other one. So the first Beis HaMikdash is associated with Avram Avinu, it's Chesed. And there were Giluim in the first Beis HaMikdash, many that we didn't have in the second Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash, we didn't have all of the Giluim of Elokus that we had in the first Beis HaMikdash, but it's Gvura, it's Yitzchak, it's better integrated. The Giluim that were there were more effectively integrated into the nature of the world, which is why it lasted longer. Just like the Gvura student, the student of the Gvura teacher is going to retain for longer, the second Beis HaMikdash lasted longer. It was better integrated into the world, at the expense of having less revealed Elokus. This is Chesed and Gvura, Avram and Yitzchak. Yaakov Avinu is known for what? Titein emes liYaakov. Yaakov Avinu is known as for emes. Emes is the truth which is in the Chesed of Kedusha, which is in the Gvura of Kedusha. That which is right in Avram and that which is right in Yitzchak. Yaakov had this purest form. Yaakov is emes. And when the emes can bring the milas of everything together, because it's the makar of all milas, which is why Yaakov Avinu is known for Tiferes, which is a bit of a mix of Chesed and Gvura. So Yaakov Avinu is associated with the third Beis HaMikdash. The third Beis HaMikdash will achieve that which the Chesed teacher cannot achieve and the Gvura teacher cannot achieve, because each of them has a Maila at the expense of the other one's Maila. The third Beis HaMikdash is Yaakov, is emes, which transcends the limitations of those two and can get to a point where we can have maximum Giloim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the very least like the first Beis HaMikdash relative to the second. It can also have maximum integration into the fabric of the world, which was that which Lefi Erech, the first Beis HaMikdash, was missing. And there's a very interesting paragraph that Zohar says about the third Beis HaMikdash, quoting a pasuk of Tilim. Uvesa ispnei al yudad devarnash, a Beis Hamikdash that was built by mankind, i.e. the first two Beit HaMikdash. V'gin kach lo yiskayim, that's why they didn't last forever. They weren't kayam forever. Shlomo havayada, Shlomo knew that the Beis Hamikdash he built wouldn't last forever because it was man-made. Something that's man-made cannot last forever. That's why it says in Tehillim, Im Hashem lo yivne bais, if the Eibishter doesn't build the Beis Hamikdash, if it's built by man, shav amluvainov, those who built it worked shav for nothing, relatively speaking, because it's not gonna last forever. It's gonna have an end and it's gonna be over. Va'ad kan, and so far, the first building to be built with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's own hands has not yet existed, and that's why they haven't been permanent. Ulazimna da'aseh, and about the time to come, about the third Beis Hamikdash, Ksiv, it's written, Bonei Yerushalayim Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will build Yerushalayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will build the third Beis Hamikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who created Chesed versus Gvura, the limitations of the two. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu builds a third Beis Hamikdash, it's compared to Yaakov, to Emes, Titin Emes Yaakov. The third Beis Hamikdash will have all the milas. It will be permanent because it's not man-made. It's built by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's own hands, and that's why it will be permanent. It will have all the milas. And may we see it. Take off Miyan Mamish.